Welcome to Mentoring Kings, the Black History Month MLK Day edition, saluting individuals who help mold America's leaders of today and tomorrow. This docuseries shines the spotlight on our nation's greatest resource, those who dedicate their lives to imparting wisdom to young people, equipping them with the tools to succeed in an ever-changing world. In keeping with Dr. King's legacy, these community-conscious men act as social justice warriors by empowering youth to be their best selves. Discipline, financial literacy, pride, and esteem, all qualities that the Kings bestow upon our young men. On today's episode, we'll meet tennis Jedi Master Kamal Murray, who's serving up skills to inner-city youth who want to change their game. Military mentor Charles E. Jeter, whose storied career is the very model of discipline and dedication. And Korey Dean, founder of Minnesota's Man Up Club, who made great sacrifice to devote his life to helping African American youth rise up. That question, posed by Dr. King over 50 years ago, is answered today by those that work in the community as youth mentors and beyond. From brave frontline responders battling the COVID crisis to those that perform simple acts such as volunteering in soup kitchens, they're all true American patriots. The Martin Luther King holiday is known as a National Day of Service. Do your duty, participate in a cleanup drive, have a conversation of substance with a young person. Any simple act can make you a true mentoring king. You're tuned into Mentoring Kings, the Black History Month MLK Day edition. Men on a mission to inspire. No one defines the term Mentoring King more than the founder and executive director of Minneapolis's Man Up Club, Korey Dean. Overcoming the ups and downs of life, Korey challenged himself at every turn to rise to the occasion. He's been a college football star and successful gospel recording artist, but his real calling is to put others on their life path. Prepare to be moved by his amazing journey.
My dream was to go play Division I football because for me, I wanted to play on television. I wanted to be seen. I wanted the big lights and all of that. And one day there was a gentleman who approached me after practice. He was a white man. His name was Mr. Kalish. And Mr. Kalish came up to me and he said, hey, you're a tremendous football player and, you have opportunity to even go on to the next level and play Division I football and possibly some pro football. He says, but how is your grades? And I said, well, my grades are, they're okay. They're not that good. He says, if you come to my house and you study every day after football practice, I promise you I'll get you a scholarship to any college in the country that you want to go to. And so I made the commitment to go. I was a junior at that time. I struggled with algebra in the 11th grade. And I would sit at the table, at their dinner table, and Kevin Kalish, a sixth grader, would teach me algebra. My grades went from C's, D's, and F's to A's and B's. I got my first lesson in true humility when I had to humble myself as a junior who was a football star and had to be tutored by this sixth grade kid. Mr. Kalish, he did get me several offers. So eventually I ended up going to St. John's University in Minnesota and I had success there. I played as a freshman. I broke the school record, touchdown scoring record. But more importantly, I made the dean's list. Then I went on to transfer to the University of Louisville, Kentucky, and went on to fulfill my dreams of playing college football at the Division I level. When I went to the University of Louisville, I met another mentor who was a black man. His name was Frank McKinney. Frank McKinney was the dean of students at the University of Louisville. And he taught me a lot, took me under his wing, gave me a coaching opportunity. And so I coached high school football as well as high school basketball while at the University of Louisville. Then tragedy hit me 2 days before Christmas. My son and his mother were traveling down an icy road, and they ended up getting hit by an 18-wheeler. She suffered brain damage. She was paralyzed from the neck down, and she ended up having, amnesia. And I ended up, raising my son in my college dorm with some help from my mom, and some teammates. So I ended up dropping out of University of Louisville and coming back to Minnesota. And I ended up going to the University of Minnesota. And that's where I really got into youth work. I recognized that as a traditional teacher, I was very limited in my ability to help those kids. Because as a teacher, you can only help them between 8 o'clock in the morning and about 2:30 in the evening. For me, the population that I wanted to work with, that's when their problems was just starting. And so I recognized that I wanted to be a youth worker at that point as opposed to a teacher. I ended up writing my own degree, a double major in sociology and youth development.
Challenges make you discover things about yourself that you never really knew.
Now, I didn't know my father, and that was a hole that was never filled for me. Now, you talk about deadbeat dads and things like that, and I was conflicted from that because I didn't know my father, but I knew about my father. So when I thought about it, my mom coming from a family of 18, and they all sing, and it was gospel. And then my father being so astute and academically astute, but also this classical musician who played all of these instruments. Music was just a big love for me. As I grew older, I wanted to get into the music industry. I wanted to be this big, famous, rapper, not knowing that God had, plans for me. So I'm out in California, in Orange County, California, in Laguna Beach, which is one of the richest parts of California. I'm out there hustling and doing all kind of ungodly things and just living the way in which I want to live with no accountability. I was a part of a gangster rap record label, and I was big into strip clubs. One night I went to a strip club, and I was sitting there at the table, listening and watching, and then God's Spirit spoke to me. He said, "Are you happy?" The answer was no, I'm not happy. The minute I said no, that's when tears started to fall down my eyes. I knew it was the voice of God. And so at that very moment, that was my clarion call. I knew God was calling me at that time.
I told you, Lord, I tell him, I'm spirit-filled and rebelling. I tell him my lungs, I'm yelling.
And so that's how I ended up starting my Christian hip hop record label. I booked a flight from California back to Minnesota to focus on my family, to focus on raising my son, and to focus on developing youth. There's a scripture that resonates with me. The scripture says, all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and who are called according to his purpose. It took time for me to truly understand that, and for things to come full circle, trials, tribulations, blessings, and situations that I went through was all working together for God's purpose. I've been blessed to be a Grammy-nominated Christian hip-hop artist. I have 3 children who are prolific artists that are in music. I think family is extremely important. I saw my grandfather raise 18 kids. Although I had that example through him, I still miss my own biological father. So mentorship became extremely important. I found people who poured into me because they saw the value. And for me, I never wanted to let anyone who invested time in me, I never wanted to let them down. I was 20 years old when I became a single father. Did I have to sacrifice? Absolutely. I sacrificed a lot. I didn't recognize at that moment when I made that decision that I was laying a character foundation for the Man Up Club, which is the organization that I'm the founder of now.
Korey Dean is living proof that the road of life can take you in any direction. We'll hear more about his inspirational work after the break. If you know someone in your community who motivates youth just like today's Mentoring Kings, nominate them at mentoringking.com/Future Kings. No truer words were ever spoken. Martin Luther King, John Lewis, Diane Nash, and hundreds consistently stood up to the challenge of fighting for our freedoms. Today's figures, such as Stacey Abrams, fighting the fair fight to secure the right to vote, to peaceful Black Lives Matters protesters and their allies fighting for our very lives, they all stand on the shoulders of those heroes and sheroes. Celebrate MLK Day by standing up to the challenge in your hood. You're watching Central City Productions' Mentoring Kings, the Black History Month MLK Day edition. And now, part 2 of Man Up Club founder Korey Dean's story of sacrifice and salvation.
The Man Up Club is something that was downloaded to me from heaven. The Man Up Club developed when I met mentors in my life who spoke into my life. I never made that connection. The trials and tribulations that I faced as a young adult and the tragedies that I had went through, I was being used and groomed to be able to speak into the lives of young men. But I always had a passion for young people. I recognize now that that was training ground for me to be connected to the culture and to understand the culture and to be able to speak the language.
I will respect myself.
I will respect myself.
I will treat others with the utmost respect.
I will treat others with the utmost respect.
The Man Up Club started in 2012. It's a mentor leadership organization for African American males between the ages of 12 and 24. We have 4 areas that we distinctly focus on when mentoring young men. We mentor young men in life skills, social skills, academic discipline, and civic responsibility. Our 3 main goals within the Man Up Club is to get our young men to graduate from high school, to keep them out of the prison pipeline, and to get them to go on to college or have a trade after high school. We have 1 in Minneapolis, we have 1 in St. Paul. And then we have several different chapters that are in middle schools as well as high schools. We also have cohorts, and our goal is to make sure that the Man Up Club is offered in every inner city across America. As a part of our curriculum, we tutor young men, whether that's in school or whether that's online, and we partner with people from the community who would like to volunteer and provide services to our young men to tutor them. We go on field trips. We have a suit up program where we provide suits for young men. We have a festival as a part of the Man Up Club. The name of my festival is God Flow. It's a celebration of urban inner city youth, and it's through Christian hip hop. And we also leverage the festival to allow our young people who are in our organization to run that festival. So our God Flow Festival is a festival for urban inner city youth, but is also facilitated and ran by urban inner city youth with the support of others. We have a podcast called The Man Up Club Presents. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to give voice to these young men where they could speak to America, because oftentimes in America, African American males have been dehumanized to the point where they're not heard. Their stories are not heard. Their hearts are not felt. They're misunderstood. And so to be able to give them a voice to speak to America has been important for us. We provide a trauma healing circle where young men come in and they talk about their trauma. You'd be surprised because many of the young men in our program don't even know that they have trauma, and they don't even recognize the consequences or the implications of their decisions. We partner with different organizations as a part of the Man Up Club. There's so many things that we do to service these young people that we want to be able to provide them a holistic approach where we're mentoring them socially, emotionally, even spiritually, and academically. Of course, it takes a lot of resources to be able to do the things that we do. We take our fundraising efforts extremely serious. And the reason we do that is because we want to provide our young men with quality services. We don't charge our young men for anything. We don't charge them for the field trips we take them on. We don't charge them to feed them. We have a suit up program where we provide suits for job interviews and things like that. And we don't charge them for any of it. Everything we offer in the Man Up Club is free. There's 3 things that I think are critical to the development of young men that are of high value. Number 1, I think that we should always do a self-assessment of ourselves as to who we are, what motivates us, and to be honest with ourselves, regardless of what the outside voices are saying and regardless of outside influences. The second thing I think is discipline. Having the ability to do what you need to do, when you need to do it, whether you want to do it or not. The key to discipline is not giving up. The beauty is in the journey. The third thing that I think is of value and extremely important to development or life development is developing a level of spirituality. We live in a generation now where God has been so removed from every aspect of society. And God has been removed in very subtle ways to the point where we don't even recognize it. We've gotten to the point where we only become self-serving. I believe that if you can put people on to that, then you can put people on to the goodness in life. And so I just think that serving others will bring the greatest reward. As many people go through their lives and live a lifetime and truly don't understand their purpose. I believe that all of the gifts that we've been possessed with, we take those gifts and we bring them all together. You may have 10 gifts, 20 gifts, 30 gifts. You may have 50, 60 gifts. All of those gifts that you're good at, I think those are the things that lead you to your one purpose. And I think my purpose is to help raise a generation of young people long after I'm gone that will say, Mr. Dean, AKA XROSS, spoke into my life and he gave me something that I could live by.
Korey Dean is doing the sometimes challenging, always life-affirming work of nurturing and developing young minds. His mandate to man up is what king-making is all about. If you know someone in your community who motivates youth just like today's Mentoring Kings, nominate them at mentoringking.com/future kings. No one personifies Mentoring King's credo of each one teach one and leading by example than the man who taught and led generations in the fight for social justice, the late, great Congressman John Lewis.
Dignity, dedication, fearlessness, mere words that can't begin to encompass the impact of the late, great John Lewis. The young man from rural Troy, Alabama, almost single-handedly wrote the template for student activism. Co-founding the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee with Diane Nash and others, Lewis risked arrest during sit-ins, leading to Nashville becoming the South's first integrated business district. His participation in the Freedom Riders movement put Lewis on the radar of Dr. Martin Luther King. Lewis gave his mentor a run for his money as the youngest speaker at the historic 1963 March on Washington. But it was in the all-important struggle for voting rights that Lewis cemented his legacy, marching side by side with the Mount Rushmore of social justice across Selma's Edmund Pettus Bridge. The infamous Bloody Sunday almost cost him his life. His selfless act of bravery helped lead to the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, establishing Lewis as the conscience of Congress as a 30-year representative from Georgia's 5th Congressional District. Whether lobbying for gun control to stop senseless violence, seeing the fruits of his work in the election of the first African-American president, having that president present the distinguished gentleman the Medal of Freedom, or bearing witness to history in his final days at Washington, D.C.'s Black Lives Matter mural, Lewis was always there. Rest well, John Lewis, one of America's greatest mentoring kings.
Thanks for watching this episode of Mentoring Kings, the Black History Month MLK Day edition. Special thanks to all of today's kings for encouraging the youth and serving as an inspiration to us all. In the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King, let their actions move you to represent for your community. See you next time. This presentation of Mentoring Kings has been brought to you by State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And in part by Walmart. Save money. Live better. U.S. Army. What's your warrior? And Stellar TV. It's all good.